But the president wants to depict undocumented immigrants as hordes of almost entirely violent criminals, which is not true.
Anybody out there know anyone who's just completely self-serving? Everything they say is to serve their ends, lie or truth, it doesn't matter. And then they say something that doesn't serve their interest in any way at all. You cannot imagine why they would say it. Well, I got a little something like this from the New York Times, of all people. This is a absolutely hilarious article. Let's just look at it. Border at breaking point as more than 76,000 migrants cross in a month. Yes, the New York Times is talking about the border crisis. A crisis some might call an emergency. But we'll get to that later. You can see in this blurb here, the point of the article is kind of a backhanded shot at Trump's policies, but we'll see if it works. Let's just read. The Trump administration's hardline stance on keeping migrants out is pushing asylum seekers to take remote and dangerous routes into the United States, and a wall might not be able to fix that. I disagree. For the fourth time in 5 months, the number of migrant families crossing the southwest border has broken records. Border enforcement authorities said Tuesday, warning that government facilities are full and agents are overwhelmed. Much like an emergency. More than 76,000 migrants crossed the border without authorization in February, more than double the levels from the same period last year and approaching the largest number seen in any February in the last 12 years.
But wait! There's more!
The system is well beyond capacity and remains at the breaking point, Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection told reporters in announcing the new data. What a xenophobe the Commissioner of Customs and Border Protection is. Can you imagine he said that? I'm sure you're gonna ream him for that, right? Diverted by new restrictions at many of the leading ports of entry, migrant families, mainly from Central America, continue to arrive in even larger groups in remote parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. At least 70 such groups of 100 or more people have turned themselves in at Border Patrol stations that typically are staffed by only a handful of agents, often hours away from civilization. By comparison, only 13 such groups arrived in the last fiscal year and 2 in the year before that. Wait, so now we are admitting there's groups of migrants traveling to the border attempting to get entry. Wow, New York Times. More than 90% of the new arrivals were from Guatemala, officials said, with a significant change in the dynamics of the migration. While Central American migrants once took weeks to journey through Mexico to the United States, many Guatemalan families are now boarding buses and reaching the southwest border in as little as 4 to 7 days on a very consistent basis. Who was it that was saying the busing of the migrants was it was a conspiracy theory? It was a really dangerous thing to say. It was totally not happening. Yeah, nice. I see what I mean, though. I cannot understand why you would write this article. Do you really think a couple shots at Trump's border wall is going to get you past you essentially writing an entire article that admits he's right? The commissioner also declared sweeping changes to the agency's procedures for guaranteeing adequate medical care for migrants, an overhaul brought on by the deaths of 2 migrant children in the agency's custody in December. You see where they're trying to hit Trump? Just wait. It gets sweet. The measures, which include comprehensive health screenings for all migrant children and a new processing center in El Paso that would help provide better shelter and medical care for migrant families, were developed with advice from outside medical experts and pediatricians, the commissioner said. They are an attempt to fix years of health care inadequacies that have left many at risk.
Wait for it!
These solutions are temporary, and this situation is not sustainable. This is clearly both a border security and a humanitarian crisis. So yes, they did revise everything because some kids died, but it's not sustainable. It's almost like it's an emergency. The high number of families crossing the border suggests that President Trump's policies aimed at deterring asylum seekers are not having their intended effect. You know, there's one policy he wanted that has been completely obstructed the whole way through. That's really not in effect.
We have to start by building a wall, a big, beautiful, powerful wall.
Maybe that has something to do with it. Up to 2,000 migrants who traveled in a caravan. Well, wait, there it is. 2,000 migrants in a caravan? That's real now? From Central America last year and faced lengthy delays in Tijuana appeared to have given up their cause as of last month after being discouraged by months of delays at the border. But the families falling behind them seem only to have adjusted their routes rather than turned back. Indeed, they are traveling in even larger numbers than before. So we went from the caravans not existing to being commonplace and even larger than before. All right, New York Times. Really torpedoing your own narrative on that. Beginning for the first time in October, members of families have come to outpace apprehensions of individual adult migrants. Here we go again. The commissioner said the authorities believe this is a result of smugglers having effectively communicated across Central America that adults who travel with children will be allowed to enter and stay in the United States. Crossing with a child is a guarantee of a speedy release and an indefinite release in the United States. No, you don't say. But CNN said, oh, this is the best article I've read in the New York Times ever. It's amazing. Brian Hastings, the agency's chief of law enforcement operations, said that since April 2018, border agents had detected nearly 2,400 cases in which migrants had falsely claimed to be related when they were not, or untruthfully claimed to be younger than 18.
What a twist!
The throngs of new families are also affecting communities on the American side of the border. Oh. So New York Times is also admitting illegal immigration is hurting Americans now. In El Paso, for example, which has seen a 434% increase in apprehensions during the current fiscal year, a volunteer network that temporarily houses the migrants after they are released from custody has had to expand to 20 facilities, compared with only 3 during the same period last year. Migrants are now being housed in churches, a converted nursing home, and about 125 hotel rooms that are being paid for with donations. So there's too much, almost like an emergency. Border officials said the biggest pull factors encouraging migrant families to make their way to the United States were federal laws and court settlements that prohibit the authorities from deporting Central Americans without lengthy processing and from detaining migrant families for more than 20 days, after which they must be released into the country while they await immigration court proceedings. Others at the agency pointed to severe poverty and food insecurity in the western highlands of Guatemala, where many of the families are from, as a primary motivation. I don't even know what to say at this point. They're conceding to everything Trump's been saying and everything they've been denying. And somehow they thought this was like a gotcha Trump thing. What, 2 years of his immigration policy is being obstructed and they're not working? You really got him there. Historically, many migrant families have been released from custody almost immediately upon crossing the border because the capacity of facilities outfitted to house parents with children is much smaller than the number of people traveling as families. Well, catch and release, yeah, I know what that is. Immigration authorities have enough space to detain about 3,000 members of migrant families. More than 28,000 crossed the border in January. Recently, though, the agency has also begun releasing single adults into the country because of backups that now extend into Immigration Customs Enforcement detention facilities across the country, where adult detainees are traditionally held until their immigration court cases are resolved. So it's so backed up that now they're releasing fully grown adults with no papers into the country. This will turn out well, I'm sure. More than 50,000 adults are currently detained in ICE custody, the highest number ever, which has in turn begun to tax government lawyers, who are tasked with prosecuting their deportation cases, according to agency officials. Yet the latest projections, based on intelligence gathered in Central America as well as patterns from previous years, suggest that the numbers of families traveling to the United States may continue to increase in the coming months, almost like an emergency. I can't imagine how we would manage without the monastery, said Teresa Cavendish, Director of Operations at Catholic Community Services, which is operating the shelter. Indeed, what would you do without the monastery? Maybe build a wall. We are the Republic's walls. Come and take it.